Hello and welcome to the third video in our CCNA 2301 Packet Tracer video course. So in this video, what we're going to do, we're going to have a look at variable length subnet masks. We're going to configure a network using one whole subnet, and we're going to split it down into multiple smaller ones. So if you jump on to my GitHub page, and of course the link is in the description, and if you click on network fundamentals, and if you go to lab 3, which is what we're doing now, and then you can download the actual files that we need. Okay, so let's click on network fundamentals and let's go to lab 3. And in lab 3, you'll see some files here. They're similar to what we've done in labs 1 and 2. So we have the packet tracer file here, the lab 3 PKT. That's just the initial lab on its own. If you want to do that with the actual guide as well. However, what we can do as well, we can do the full, which has the actual guide built into it as well. So that's what I'm going to download and start up, is the actual full. Now we've actually got some subnet in practice as well, and we've got a VLSM walkthrough document as well. It's all some good stuff. So I've opened the guided lab here, and we have the instructions already with it. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is we are going to basically be subnetting down the 172.16.0/16 subnet. Okay, so basically what we want to do on this is we need to get, as we can see here, 60 hosts on here. We need to get 30 hosts here, 14 hosts here, and 6 hosts here. And they're all going to be out of the 172.16.0.0/X subnet. Okay, so what we're going to do with this is we're going to have a quick look. Even though you've been doing your CCNA studies elsewhere, we need to have a very quick look to see how we can actually do this subnetting. So you can see I've included a small subnetting chart in with the actual instructions. So it shows us the CIDR notation, the host bits, the amount of addresses, what are usable, because if you remember, you have a network address and a broadcast address, so it's always going to be 2 less. And then it includes the actual subnet masks as well for each one of them. So the first objective here is to basically figure out the actual IP addresses that we need to use. So we can see here that the first one that we have here requires 60 hosts. Now, so we need to work out what 60 hosts actually is. So the thing is that we need to ensure again that we remember the network and the broadcast as well. So if we can see here, we have 62 here. So we can have 62 user pool addresses, which is what we actually want. So we know that we're going to have to do a /26 for the 60 hosts. Okay, that's fine. We can work with that, and we can see that that will be a .192 for the subnet mask. Okay, so we want 30 hosts down here for switch A for branch 1. So 30 hosts, well, we can exactly get that down as a /27, which is again fantastic. So we're going to have a /26 up here, we're going to have a /27 down here. We want 14 hosts down here. Again, that fits in nicely with the /28. See if I can highlight. I'm going to try and highlight that without getting all the others. So we can get the /28 will do this particular net part of the network, and then the 6 hosts here. So 6 hosts will be a /29. So we need to create a /26, /27, /28, and a /29. Now, the thing with subnetting is that you want to allocate the highest subnet first. So we want to allocate the /26 first, because if we allocate the /26, then that means that everything else should be able to follow on quite nicely. Okay, so let's carry on with this. Let's have a little gander. Okay, so let's start with our /26 now. So we can see from the chart that the /26 gives us the right amount of IPs that we want. Okay, so 64 IPs, so it's going to go 172.16.0.0 up to .63, which is exactly what we want. So we can use anything from .1 all the way to 62. So we'll use .1 for the router, .2 for the switch, and then any other IPs you want to actually use. So that is going to be our /26, which is what we want. Now we know we need to have a /27 for this link down here for our 30 hosts. So /27, we know that we need to start at .64 because the last address was 63. So if we do .64 and then we count up another 30 from that, or 31 from that, to be honest with you, that will bring us up to 95. So we can go 64 to 95, and don't forget 64 is the network, 95 is the broadcast, and this again is a /27. So we know that already, we can see that in there. That's brilliant. Okay, so we know now then that the next block of IPs is going to start at 96. So that will be 96, and we're going to do a /28 this time. So it's going to go 96 all the way up to 111. And again, that's the broadcast, that's the network, and this is going to be our /28. And then lastly, we need to do our last address. So that would be 112 up to 119. And then what we're going to do for our WAN links, we are, our WAN links from here and here. What we're going to use a couple of /30s. So that will give us, for argument's sake, we could do 172.16.0.120 up to 123, and then 123, 126. Okay, fantastic. So what we can do, we should be able to get these configured now. Let's clear this rubbish off the screen because it looks atrocious, and my writing's really bad. You've probably seen that in all my other videos as well. My writing's really atrocious. Okay, so what we'll do now, what you'll do now is you'll pause the video for a little while you go ahead and work out the actual subnets. And then once the subnets are worked out, we'll then start configuring them. Okay, so you should have now figured out all the subnets that are needed, the subnet masks, the IP addresses, the broadcast addresses, the network addresses, etc. So what we'll do, we'll start doing the configurations. So I'm going to configure the headquarters router for you, and what will happen then is after that's done, you can go away and you can configure branch 1 and branch 2 yourselves, and then we will move on to the switches. Okay, so I'm just going to move this to the side. Fantabulous. All right, let's bring up the headquarters router and go to our CLI, and let's get started on this, and hopefully we should be able to get this done pretty quickly. But don't worry if you're having problems with working out the subnetting. At the very end, we'll go through what the actual addresses should actually be, and within the VLSM walkthrough as well, they are actually there for you as well. Okay, so let's get cracking. So we're on the router. Okay, so the initial configuration is the same as most. So Cisco, enable, class. All right, great stuff. That's exactly what we want to see. All right, so first thing is set the host name to HQ. Well, I've already done that on this one. On the consecutive devices, you'll be expected to do your host name. So let's go into configuration mode. Brilliant. Okay, so it wants us to configure Giga Ethernet 0/0. So 0/0, which is our link to headquarters. This is the headquarters LAN subnet. This is going to go to the actual switch, as you know. So let's do that. So we know we want our 60 hosts on this. Okay, so let's go into interface G 0/0. All right, brilliant. And let's do our IP address, and in this case it's going to be 172.16.0.1, and the subnet mask for a /26 is 255.255.255.192. No, shut it. And we'll put the description as HQ LAN, and let's do 60 hosts. Let's do description. Brilliant. Okay, so that's our description done. That's our IP address done, and that is our no shut done. So that interface is up and running. Okay. All right. So the next one is to do our Giga Ethernet. Oops, let's just move up there. Is to do our Giga Ethernet 0/1, which is going to be our WAN to our headquarters branch 1 switch. So if we have a look, it's now this link here between the router and that router. Okay, so these should be /30s. So let's bring up our, actually we don't want that. Actually we do want that. Let's bring that back up, and let's bring up our guide, and let's pop that to the side because we don't actually need that now. We know what we're doing. Okay, so let's do interface G 0/1, and let's do the description this time. So description, and we're going to put that as WAN branch 1. All right, excellent stuff. And we're going to do our IP address as 172.16.0. Move that out of the way. .121. Okay, and we know it's a /30, so it's going to be 255.255.255.252. Make sure you put the address and no shut. Okay, so that interface now is up, and again it's asking us to do the, let's move this across. It's asking us now to do Giga Ethernet 02 to WAN headquarters branch 2 subnet. Okay, and again, because that is going to the other router, that's going to be a /30 as well. So let's move this across here, get it out of the way, and let's do Doom. I have no shut that. Yep. Okay, so interface, and let's do G 0/2. and let's do IP address, and it's going to be 172.16.0.125.255.255.255.252, and let's do a description, and it's going to be well, we put a description. Oh yeah, WAN to branch 1. Yep, WAN to branch 1. Okay, fantastic. All right, and let's shut that. Brilliant. Okay, and I'm going to write it, and I'm going to write it to memory from configuration mode. So I'm going to do a do. You should already have gone through with your CCNA studies that if you do the do command in configuration mode, then you can run any privilege exec commands there. So do WR, and that's building my configuration. Fantastic. Let's have a look at the actual configuration. So we can do a do show run to show our running config, and we can have a look at our interfaces, and we can see that they are up. Excellent stuff. Okay, so we have now configured this link, and this link. What you need to do now is toodle pip, and you configure branch 1 and branch 2, and then we'll come back and we'll have a little look and carry on, and we'll do our switches, our PCs, and we'll do some verifications. Okay, so you should have had the branch 1 and branch 2 now configured with the correct IP address scheme. So let's have a look what we're going to do now. So we're going to configure our switches. So for each switch, we're going to set the appropriate host name. We're going to configure VLAN 1 interface with the IP address from the address table. We're just going to use the next one up from what its default gateway is going to be, i.e. the interface that goes from the router down to the switch, or vice versa. And what we'll do then is we'll add in the default gateway. So let's have a look. Again, we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to do switch headquarters switch, and then you can go along and do the other 3 switches. Don't forget, we will go through the IP address scheme later on if you're having some problems. So let's jump on to the switch. Alrighty, so let's bring up the CLI, and let's go Cisco, enable, class, okay, conf T, and what we'll do interface VLAN 1. Okay, and the IP address that we're going to do for this one is going to be the second IP that is available within the /26. So IP address is going to be 172.16.0.2, and it's going to be 255.255.255.252. And don't forget, for the VLAN interface, we didn't have to do the no shut. All right, okay, so that's fine. Let's get out of interface mode, and now we need to do our default gateway. So IP default gateway, and that's going to be 172.16.0, and that's going to be 1. That was right. Okay, 25. Yeah, we don't use the subnet on that. All right, so that's fine. Let's end that. Okay, and let's ping that. See if we can ping the default gateway. 172.16.0.1. Give it a moment. There we go. All right, so we can successfully ping the gateway from the switch. Brilliant. Okay, so this is the switch configured, and this is the headquarters ones configured. Again, you go away and you do branch A, branch 1B, and branch 2. Okay, so by now you should have configured all 3 switches that are at the bottom there. So what we need to do, we now need to do our static routes. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do the static routes for the headquarters. Now, there's going to be 3 static routes here. We need a static route going from the headquarter to the branch, for switch A and switch B subnets, and we need one going to branch 2 for switch 2 branch 2 subnets. Okay, so let's get cracking with that, and then again, once we've done that, you'll go away and you will configure your static routes on branch 1 and branch 2. You'll find that it should be relatively easy, especially after you've seen the static routes being done for the actual headquarter switch. So let's have a look at this one, and let's do Cisco enable class. Yeah, maybe I might be giving away too much of the subnetting if you've had a problem with it, but hopefully not. Let's go conf t. Excellent stuff. Excellent. That's exactly what we want to see. Okay, so let's do an IP route, and I want to go to the 172.16.0.64 subnet, 255.255.255.224. You should know what that is. Okay, and then we're going to send that to 172.16.0.122. Okay, and let's do our IP route, and let's do 172.16.0.96, 255.255.255.240, and again that's going to go to 172.16.0.122. Okay, so that now is the static routes that have been done from the headquarters to the branch 1 router, which will service the switch A and switch B subnets. Now we need to do the one going from the headquarters to branch 2 to service the branch 2 subnets. Okay, so let's do an IP route, and it's going to be 172.16.0.112, and it's going to be 255.255.255.248, and we're going to send that to 172.16.0.126. Alrighty, let's end that and let's write it. Okay, so I've done my static routes. So as far as the switch is concerned and these devices, once they're configured, and the router itself, it can reach these 3 subnets here, but of course there will be no return traffic. So again, we'll pause the video now and you toodle pip off and you configure the static routes on branch 1 and branch 2 routers. Okay, so you should be done now with the branch 1 and branch 2 static routes. Now, you may have been clever to realize that all you need here is a default static route. You just need every subnet 0000 and a 0000 subnet mask as well to send your traffic, because there's nowhere else that the traffic can go. Branch 1 has to go through the headquarters router, so everything is going to go that direction. And the same with branch 2, its static route is going to be exactly the same, because everything has to go to the headquarters. So branch 1 cannot communicate with branch 2 unless it goes through the headquarters. That's fantastic. So if we have a little look, as you can see here on branch 1, my static route is 0000, then 0000 subnet, and to the next hop IP, and exactly the same, of course the IP is different, on branch 2. Fantabulous. Okay, so the last part that we need to do before we start running some verifications is to just quickly configure our PCs. So I'm going to again configure PC 1 and 2, and then you can do 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, because I'm harsh that way. Okay, so all we're going to do here is to choose an IP address that is not being used, that is within your actual subnet. So you should have your subnet calculations. So for argument's sake, I'm going to choose .10 and .20 for PC1 and PC2 with the correct subnet mask for a /26, and then you'll be expected to do the other 6 PCs yourself. All right, so let's get cracking with that. Let's open up PC1, go to desktop, go to no, sorry, not go to desktop, go to config, and need to put my default gateway in there. So 172.16.0.1. Okay, so that's fine. We know that's the gateway. And let's put in our address. So I'm going to do 172.16.0.10. And it will automatically put in, because it's a 172, it assumes that you're using, it's a bit weird this way, but it assumes you're using a class B subnet, which we're not. We're using what would be considered a class C subnet. So change that to 255.192. Alrighty, and that is that PC configured. Let's configure PC2, and let's go into our configuration, put my default gateway in, which is 192.168.172.16.0.1, and let's do our actual configuration. So it's going to be 172.16.0.20. Our default gateway is going to be 255.255.255, and it's going to be 192. Alrighty, so in theory I should now be able to ping PC1. So let's go to the command prompt and let's see what happens here. Ping 172.16.0.10. There we go, and I'm now getting a reply. Fantastic. Let's try .2, which is the actual VLAN 1 interface on the switch. It shouldn't take too long for the switch to actually reply back. Okay, so we couldn't ping the switch, unfortunately. I can ping the default gateway. However, looking on the switch, so let's bring the switch up here. Hey, you'll notice a typo that I done in the subnet mask. I put the VLAN 1 address as 255.255.255.252, and it should be 255.255.255.192. So let's correct that. So CompT interface VLAN 1, and let's do IP address 172.16.0.2, 255.255.255.192. Okay, so end. Let's write that. All right, let's go back now to that switch, that PC rather. Okay, and let's confirm. Ping default gateway, fine. Ping PC1, fine. Okay, so that was all fine and dandy. Let's now try the switch, and we should get responses back from that. There we go. Brilliant. All right, little typo, but hey ho, I mean, I could have edited that out, but these things happen, it's just one of those things. All right, so if you go along and you configure PCs 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, and then we'll come back and we'll do some verifications, and then after that we'll have a quick look at the actual address scheme. Okay, so you should now have configured all the PCs with IP addresses from the corresponding subnets. So let's have a look at some verifications. So on each router, show IP interface brief, and then show an IP route to verify the routing table. So on the headquarters, let's have a look. So let's go in Cisco and enable class. Let's do a show IP interface brief. Okay, so we can see our interfaces are up. That looks great. Let's do a show IP route, and we can see 1 static route, 2 static routes, and where is the third one? Oh, the third one's right underneath it. 3 static routes. Okay, so that's looking good. Let's have a look at branch 1, and let's do Cisco enable class. There we go. Show IP interface brief. All righty. Okay, so we're seeing our interfaces are up with the correct IPs. This is fantastic. Let's do a show IP route, and we can see here that we have a static route here, which is 000/0, and we can also see that this is the gateway of last resort. So everything is going to the interface on the headquarter router. And let's have a look at branch 2, and let's do Cisco enable class show IP interface brief. Again, we have our interfaces set up, which is fine. We only have 2 interfaces on this one, the same as on the other branch router. Show IP route. Wonderful. Okay, so we see again, we have down here our static route, and it's set as the gateway of last resort. Brilliant. So let's have a little look and see what it wants us to actually do now. Do some pinging. All righty. So let's jump onto PC1. Let's go into desktop. Let's go into command prompt, and let's do ping 172.16.0.20, which is the what I chose for PC2. Okay, let's do 70, which is PC3. Let's do 80, which is PC4. That's looking good. Let's do 100, which should be PC5, and 105 that I chose for PC6. Wonderful. And let's do 115 that I've chosen for PC7, and 116 that I've chosen for PC8. There we go. We've got some traffic going through, and PC6. All right, so we have now successfully configured all of these devices. We've subnetted down the 172.16.0.0 subnet or IP address. We've done 1, 2, 3, 4 different subnets on there. We've done /26s, /27s, /28s, and /29, and of course /30 that we've used for our router to router, our WAN links. We could have actually got away with using /31s if we wanted to. /31 is only 2 addresses, and in those addresses, of course, there's no broadcast or there's no network. We could have done that, but we just went with /30s. But like I said, your mileage may vary. All righty, so what you want to see is the actual IPs in case you've had a little bit of a issue doing the subnetting. I mean, it's not the easiest to subnet this particular address range. I know in a lot of CCNA studies they tell you to do just the /30, and that's it. Okay, so let's bring up the IP address scheme for you. So if you want to pause the video, have a little look through that to see if we came up with the same. Don't forget the PCs, however. It doesn't matter if you've not got the same IP addresses that I've put down, as long as you've got IP addresses from the subnet and you have reachability, apart from branch B or second branch. Those two you have to choose 115 and 116. You've got a little bit more flexibility with the other PCs in which you want to actually assign the addresses for. Alrighty, so I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one, where we'll be dealing with some more networking goodness. Thank you very much for your time.